Welcome to Radio Amenti, embracing the eternal now, where minds and timelines merge, inspiring synchronicity, awakening potential, and making sense of change.
Hello. I hope you're having a great week so far. It's Thursday, September 19th, 2024. Recording this around 10:17 a.m. Puerto Vallarta, Mexico time. I'm really psyched to share this episode with you and my friends over at SpectreVision. Were so kind enough to share the audio from the recent event that we did back on September 3rd at the Philosophical Research Society in Los Feliz, California. An incredible center of community, esoterica, magic and wonder, built by the incredible Manly P. Hall. If you're unfamiliar with Manly P. Hall's work, for any seeker of spiritual realms or tying together threads of the great perennial wisdom that surfaces through different eras and ages and epochs from time immemorial. Manly P. Hall was an incredible mind, and literally I could have an episode, and we'll have an episode eventually just dedicated to him. But yeah, Philosophical Research Society, doing this event there was definitely a dream come true, and the audio from this will be a lot of fun for you to listen to. So this event was called High Strangeness. The intention was, in the years that have passed since the pioneering work of psychedelic explorers Aldous Huxley, Eileen, Garrett, and Terence, McKenna, the connections between psychotropic substances and paranormal experience has increasingly become a verboten subject. Yet, as many modern psi-travelers can attest, mind-altering substances often blur the lines between realities, tapping into and enhancing encounters with the unknown. This panel was moderated by Daniel Noah, who is the co-founder of SpectreVision. It was supposed to be moderated by Elijah Wood, but he had extenuating circumstances that didn't allow him to attend, which was a bummer, so I was very much looking forward to meeting him, but alas, another time. In this panel, you'll hear myself, Jennifer Sodini, Jim Perry, who is the host and creator of Euphomet and the director of SpectreVision Radio, also Henry Zabrowski, who is the host of Last Podcast on the Left, who I had a lot of fun riffing with because he was the other resident trickster, if you will. And then Michael Mazzola, I think he took the place of Daniel Noah, place of Elijah, but Michael is a filmmaker. He made Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, did a lot of work with Stephen Greer. You'll hear here. I don't know if I necessarily say my total feelings of Stephen Greer, but needless to say, that also too could be its own episode. And for some reason, he added me on LinkedIn, which is very funny. To me, if you don't know who Stephen Greer is, he is a big proponent of something called CE5, which is a technique designed to contact extraterrestrials through a combination of remote viewing, meditation, crop circle tones. I mean, you'll hear me tell the story about how I had an experience with it that was actually quite terrifying. I've shared it on other podcasts called Aliens and Artists, but I haven't so readily talked about it, but it was nice to be able to share it. And beyond that, we talk a lot about psychedelics, paranormal, share a lot of laughs, and I think there was really great chemistry between all of us. I had a lot of fun. I hope you have just as much fun listening to it. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, all the things, whether it's on iTunes or Spotify. It really helps with rankings now that we've relaunched. Anyway, sit back, relax, enjoy the panel. I hope you can fully immerse yourself in the experience as though it feels that you were right there with us, laughing along. Until next time, enjoy.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. All right, so please welcome to the stage Jim Perry. Jim Perry. Hello, Jim. Jim is the creator, host of Euphemet, which is a beautiful podcast about the paranormal, and the director of our network. Next up, we have Jennifer Sedini, who is an esoteric author and oracle. Hello. Hi. Then we have Henry Zabrowski. Did I say that right? Zabrowski? The force of nature from last podcast on the left. And last but not least, Michael Mazzola, filmmaker, experiencer, and a good friend. Thank you. All right. Now we sit down. Now we sit.
Oh, God. Ready to go.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks for coming. So we're going to talk about something tonight that people don't generally talk about in public. And this is the relationship between psychotropics and the paranormal.
Oh, so we weren't supposed to be on them.
No, yes. In fact, I've put a little something in all of your drinks. So, yeah.
That's illegal.
Yeah.
It's a crime that you admitted to into a microphone.
He doesn't care.
So let's. I'm going to start with a general question, and we'll just go down the row here. What is the difference between a psychedelic and a paranormal experience?
All right. You have the straight edge. Do the straight edge guy go first? Listen. Perhaps the method in which these are accelerated and or created is potentially different for what we know. But is there a big difference once these interactions, once these experiences are occurring? I'm not quite sure. I don't think anyone knows, right? But I think what is exciting about this panel tonight is we'll explore what that dimension could be, what those comparisons are between the, sort of the numinous, the perhaps astral, and the psychedelic, right? Because there are so many reports from people who have experimented, who have practiced, who have become psychonauts or not, who, they're telling paranormal stories. They're encountering entities. They're going to other worlds. These shamanic states seem to be so powerful and moving for so many individuals, right? And I think we'll find that intersection here tonight.
I know that when I explain to my accountants that sometimes what happens in my mind is as real as anything that happens outside of my mind, they get angry. The IRS gets angry at that. Because time, as we know, isn't real, but schedules are. Yeah. Forms are very real. But I do think that it is a weird line between, what's the difference between a full-on, suck into the, you ego death, the edges of you disappear into a psychedelic experience / what happens to an experiencer that talks about being pulled up into a ship against their will. But a lot of times it doesn't involve getting probed unless you're in Alabama. I'm like this. Do you want to explain that? I'm just saying the idea that most of the time when I have a psychedelic experience, I don't get scooped. You know what I mean? If when all the experiencers get scooped, they get their shins scooped, they get their something taken out of them, they're at a dermatologist on cocaine, but that doesn't normally happen when I'm on acid.
No.
At least that you're aware of.
I mean, most of the time I'm always covered in weird micro cuts and bruises, but I just think it's because I roll around.
That's when they get you, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
For me, I think the paranormal and the psychedelic are very interlaced. The convergence being that liminal numinous, ineffable space. I think it's just a matter of language, right? Like, what is a word you use to describe something that's beyond you that you experience in your mind through a drug or through your breath, beyond you that you experience in the room of your childhood home where maybe your grandma appears. It's just those experiences that are hard to put to words that transcend normal reality.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of overlap between the two, but not for me personally. There's been no overlap between my psychedelic experiences and my paranormal experiences. But for thousands of other people, you know, they're experiencing the same kinds of entities and phenomenon that other people would see without psychedelics. So I think it's deeply personal, and it's really hard to generalize about these things.
I actually wonder, like, so what do you mean when you say psychedelic experience versus paranormal experience? Because I do know that, like, when I've had a very intense psychedelic experience, it's me experiencing the entire thing, and it doesn't feel like it's coming from the outside, except for when I had a full-on, I did speak to an entity while I was tripping a very intense amount of mushroom tea, and I spoke to a full-on corporeal thing that was talking back at me independently. But I wouldn't call that paranormal, necessarily.
Well, this is what I'm asking. Why not?
What is paranormal, though? Like, how do you define that
Para
word?
is an exception, right? So why? Yeah. This is exactly what I'm getting at. Let me ask you a question. Would you classify that as a hallucination?
No.
You feel you encountered an entity for real?
Yes.
Yes. So
Yes, I do think that what I saw was only just because it had its own set of opinions. It had its own set of ideas. It had its own, like, it was telling me something. Basically, it was telling me to stop freaking out.
he was talking you down.
It was saying, you don't understand this. You're not supposed to be here. Like, basically, you tripped into this place. You're not supposed to be here. Some people spend their whole lives working themselves to try to get themselves ready to this point. You just sort of, like, half-assed your way into the bardo, which has been my whole fucking life. I've just been funny, and people have given me passes and allowances. And so in that way, I got that going for me, and it still works for me.
Half-assed to the Bardo is the name of your next album.
Great concept.
So this is a good. Let's talk about Aldous Huxley and the concept of the cerebral reduction valve. Does anybody want to take this one, or should I keep going? Okay, so Aldous Huxley wrote a book called Doors of Perception. He was a fairly straight-laced guy. What year was that book? Anybody know? I can't remember.
It was before, like, acid. Everybody knew that acid was cool.
I think it was 50s, maybe? No one knows this? Okay. He had written Brave New World. So someone gave him mescaline. And he was like, well, I'll give this a shot. And he took the mescaline, and he tripped balls, and he was a changed man. And he wrote this book called Doors of Perception, in which the basic thesis is that we all have something called the cerebral reduction valve. And the cerebral reduction valve is an apparatus in our brain that protects us from perceiving what's really out there, because it would be too much. So it shuts down, I don't remember if he cites a percentage, but let's say 90% of the data that's actually around us all the time. And so John Keel also talks about this in Operation Trojan Horse, where he says the brain is a receiver, and it's only tuned to a very narrow bandwidth. And that he says roughly 30% of the human race has a slightly broader bandwidth, and 10% has a more significantly broader bandwidth. And these are the people who experience ESP, see UFOs, have ghost encounters, so forth and so on. And as he says, if you're amongst the gifted 30%, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you are, as he says very judgmentally, amongst the ungifted 70%, nothing we say will ever convince you. This is this idea that, did someone just clap for that quote. I wish, yeah. Well, honestly, that passage changed my life when I read that, because it was the first time I felt that I had a handle on what I was experiencing. But so according to this philosophical system, I always equate this to bird migration, right? So how do birds know where to go? Well, they are able to read in some way the magnetic field. What is that like? We have no idea, because we don't have that sense, right? It's a sense we don't have. What other senses do we not have? We can't conceive of them because we don't have them, right? We only have 5. Some of us dip into a 6th that we can't explain, and science is not equipped to measure or interpret. Psychotropics will sometimes broaden your bandwidth, regardless of how gifted or ungifted you are. And it will loosen the cap on the cerebral reduction valve a little bit, this is my opinion, and allow you to glimpse things. I don't like the word hallucination. I think it's wrong. I actually think this is a hallucination. Right?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Take my clothes off.
Yeah. It's not real. Go for it.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
No consequences.
And so, for people who experiment with mind alteration, and it's funny, we're not here to talk about drug experiences, although we will, but there are many ways to alter your mind. You can alter your mind through breathing, through meditation, or you can ingest a plant or a chemical compound, right? And they have different effects. They open up your perception in different ways. Mushrooms, some people believe, are from space, right? These are spores that maybe came down. This isn't a panel. I'm giving a lecture right now.
Keep going. This is great.
Are we going to talk about stoned ape theory next?
What's that?
Oh, yeah, dude.
Stoned ape theory?
Stone ape?
Yeah.
I don't know that one.
Oh, really?
Take
Wanna
it.
do it?
Take it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a theory that while apes were searching for food, they stumbled across psychedelic fungi, and that led to a stair step in their evolution, which got us to where we are somehow. There's a great animation of it.
It helped flesh out
Yeah.
their language. They'll be able to talk more, and we actually learn how to shit talk first. This is according to some studies that we learned to shit talk and gossip first, which turned into military tactics, which turned into government, which turned into law, and it's the way we sort of, so it did sort of expand our understanding of our life in a holographic way, where essentially what we did was take imaginary concepts and make them real.
It was the first psyop.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. First smokescreen.
But to get back to your mushroom experience, some people before they take mushrooms will set an intention, and that intention will play out in their trip, and I think trip's an interesting word in this context. Anyone can interrupt me anytime. Okay. Why don't you guys just go sit down?
I have to be restrained. All right, I am literally just trying to not.
Please.
I can't.
So, all right, I'm gonna throw this back at you. For those of you here who on the panel who have had a mushroom experience, I want to ask you: do you in retrospect feel that you were hallucinating, or were you in fact seeing a reality that is normally hidden from us?
Oh, it was the most real thing I ever experienced. And I put myself in the ungifted 70% that you were talking about until I started working with plant medicine in these sacred ceremonies, always with a shaman, never just a party or for fun on my own. And the first time I did a proper mushroom ceremony, I went into a state of unity consciousness, where I became the vibration of love that was all of reality. Wow. And then I came out of it, and I asked the shaman, "Is that supposed to happen?" And he's like, "Yeah, usually it takes people a little bit longer, but you went straight there." And I was like, "Yeah, well, I'm busy, so I'm not going to fuck around." And every subsequent ceremony has deepened that. And now I would actually put myself in the gifted 30%. It's why the stoned ape theory is actually very plausible to me because I've experienced the evolution myself. I haven't worked with the medicine in over a year now, and I'm still experiencing the benefits. It's, totally deepened my meditation practice. I know I'm rambling, so I'll pass the mic.
Do you think I feel like it's key to have the meditation process with the psychedelic process, because I do think that it is true. I was reading about Ram Dass and talking about the idea of moving from, he was an academic, and then he went through the drug phase of it, is what he called it, the psychedelic phase of it, and then it turned into, how do I use that as a jumping off point to essentially just sit there and vibe, which seems fucking impossible.
Yeah, no, totally. It's often presented as, do you want to sit in a cave and meditate for 50 years, or do you want to just cut to the chase and do an ayahuasca ceremony or a mushroom ceremony? And the answer is actually you're better off with both. These are all powerful technologies along with breath work and yoga. I take a very integrative approach, and that's what I always recommend to people.
Yeah, maybe I'm going to say something unorthodox because
Please do.
I think we use these words like gifted, not gifted, muggle, not muggle, because of our Western understanding and this lack of a rite of passage. Indigenous cultures have worked with these medicines for thousands of years. It's so normal that this is actually abnormal to be like, I'm gifted because I tripped. No. You got to see the other side, which is something that's been denied to us, right? One of my favorite quotes by Krishnamurti is that it's no measure of health to be well-adjusted in a profoundly sick society. So I think that's the thing that we're tangling with now as we see this rise in the psychedelic movement, this infusion of deeper psychedelic culture is now it's becoming identity, it's becoming anesthetized, it's becoming prescribed. And that's also a dangerous thing that we have to really sit with too.
It's so true because, what are the first things in developed countries that are outlawed or take out into the fucking back and shot in the head? It's psychedelics or mysticism. Yeah. Both those things are just, you're done, no more of this, we're in control now. So it's interesting, this parallel between those two ideas of the paranormal, of let's just equate mysticism or occultism into that, magic, witchcraft. Let's just throw that in there. As this is how they're tied together. These shortcuts, these hacks to these metaphysical experiences. Why would anyone in power want us to have access to that, right?
That's also the war on consciousness.
And I think that esoteric practices are what you'd call the analog version of psychedelics. And that you're supposed to use that as that's why it kind of all sort of works together. Because I think people, when you say the word paranormal, you assume, in my mind, my first assumption is that's science we haven't explained yet. That's right. Right, that's just, we're gonna get to that. It's on the docket. Especially when you have those scientists that are just stranded in the ISS right now, and they're like, what if we get us back first and then we can work on your shit? Being groovy with the machine, but I do think that is it all goes together. Where psychedelics, it is a shortcut to the experience of hacking your own brain. Timothy Leary said that he was following up the work of Aleister Crowley, essentially trying to rehack the brain, because Aleister Crowley even admits that all of even his esoteric practices is all about getting into the backstage part of your brain, getting into the DOS framework of your brain.
With a lot of cocaine too, though.
Yeah, because it helped him.
And Freud.
It was a study aid. Who else used Adderall in college?
Me.
It's the same shit, yeah. And he had better stuff. But yeah, I feel like in that way, that's kind of what we're getting towards. Is it's all supposed to kind of, the brain makes all of reality. None of this exists. When I finally am allowed to die by the government, all of this and all of you go away, right? So essentially, it's like I just killed everybody. So none of you exist. I'm sorry. Wow. But yeah, there's a lot to take in. I'm rambling now. This is why you have to take this from me. But yes. Oh, God. Oh. Full meltdown. You know what I mean? If reality is generated by this,
of
like
course.
lump
Yeah.
in our head,
Yeah.
then this is obviously the thing that has to be worked with, one way or another.
Yeah. Keep going.
To understand society.
Yeah.
And you can do it one way or another. I sometimes wonder if psychedelics hurts my progress psychically. Sometimes.
Is the TLDR like you can take the elevator up, but maybe take the ladder down?
The thing is about taking the stairs, you get a great ass. So if you take the stairs, you get all the lessons and you get all the shit. I was full on to all the chaos magic stuff. I was jerking off onto sigils and praying for fucking acting jobs and doing all this kind of shit. And then I realized eventually that, oh no, but actually the nerds are right. You got to do all the reading. You can't just cut to the fun part, girls in latex harnesses and shit. You'll get that, but you have to do the other stuff first. You have to do the reading.
You should know the sigil that you're coming on at least.
I knew where it came from.
But I'm bumped.
Well, this is a good point you raise about consciousness and its role in paranormal and psychedelic experience. So you're talking about meditation, and I think you said it's good to meditate in tandem with tripping. What something we've been experimenting with in paranormal, sort of experimenting with different types of paranormal investigation, and something that we've found to be extremely fruitful is beginning with meditation. Right, and by putting yourself into an altered state of mind, you are far more likely to have an interaction with something from beyond the veil, as opposed to these ghost hunting shows where the joke is "Come at me, ghost."
Face me, bro.
Yeah.
Come get me, ghost.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But if rather than barging in aggressively like that to sort of just put yourself into a gentle state of reception, you have a very different kind of experience. And to your point, Henry, paranormal or supernatural is just simply things we haven't studied yet, or we don't have the tools to study yet. So we refer to them by these names. So to get back to consciousness, this might be maybe an interesting time to talk a little about CE5, which is something Michael has made a brilliant film about called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. That's the title, right?
Indeed.
You would have corrected me if it was, yeah. Not to be confused with Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind, which is not a good movie. No
Very
disrespect.
scary, don't watch it.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about CE5 and how it works?
Yeah, sure. So, are we familiar with the different classifications? So close encounters of the first kind is when you see an object in the sky, right? Close encounters of the second kind is when some kind of physical evidence is left behind, like a crop circle or radar tapes, something like that. Close encounters of the third kind is when the occupants of the craft are seen. Close encounters of the fourth kind is when a human is brought on board a spaceship. And close encounters of the fifth kind is human-initiated contact. So if you Google this, if you watch our documentary, which I think is now free on YouTube, you'll see all kinds of crazy shit that people have captured doing this. And the official CE5 protocols are these sort of series of complicated meditations. You meditate for a while, and then you sort of remote view in space, and you try to make contact with an extraterrestrial civilization, and then you show them your location. And it's very complicated. It works, but really CE5 is just sending an intention out that is coherent enough for another civilization to pick up on and respond and show up. And if you can, I know people who can just walk outside, look at the sky, and stuff will appear. Some of the most amazing footage in our films was captured just that way. For the rest of us who have rats in our brains, we need more complicated processes. So, pick your poison. But this is something that everyone can try. And we have hundreds of thousands of people who are doing this around the world. And don't take my word for it. Just look it up on YouTube, and the results speak for themselves. It's including we have a few images of actual flesh and blood ETs that materialized or partially materialized. We had one during a CE5 group meditation in 2019 in Oracle, Arizona. We had a guy in our group who was basically deaf his whole life, and he had a hearing aid, and this ET materializes next to him. You can see the photograph. It was taken by David Marconi, who randomly wrote Enemy of the State. He was there, and he took the picture, and it's fucking crazy. And this being healed his hearing. The next morning, he threw out his hearing aid. So yeah, really crazy shit.
Has anyone here tried CE5? Clap.
I have.
No, we'd be talking about it.
No.
I have.
Oh my
That showed,
goodness.
if I met an alien, I'd be talking about it.
Have you guys tried CE5? Or some form of it?
I have, and I had actually a very terrifying experience.
Tell us.
So this is where, talking about rites of passage, initiation, touching realms maybe you're not quite prepared for. And these things, actually, it's a good story of a convergence of psychedelic and paranormal. So the summer this happened, an ex-boyfriend of mine toured with the Budos band, and he came back with a pile of acid, literally, like a lot. So we spent a good amount of that summer tripping balls. But in between touring, totally sober, talking about like your mind opening because of these substances, but during a night sober, a group of us went to the beach. I thought it would be funny to play crop circle tones and talk about CE5 and all of the things. And we had something happen that none of us were prepared for. A gigantic bright light had appeared over the horizon of the ocean, dancing kind of back and forth, up and down. Mind you, we're all sober. And then we all were feeling, wow, this is it. I went on this whole tangential thing about, like, see, look, consciousness. We were playing crop circle tones, and now the UFO appeared. It's here. Then we all start talking about different kind of entities and things. And somebody mentioned darker entity, and we look up and see a gigantic black translucent triangle hover over our heads silently and disappear into the horizon. And we all were scared shitless, ran off the beach, said, what the hell just happened? Like, what? So to this day, I still tangle with what that meant, what it was. I had a very famous conspiracy theorist, media personality tell me that the UFO, the bright light, was a beautiful entity from the ineffable, but maybe the black triangle was some government thing. I don't know.
Was it RFK?
Yeah, I think it was piloted by the worm.
You would have known him by his trail of roadkill.
But yeah, so not to take it to a weird place, but I mean, isn't this high strangeness anyway?
No, I love this.
Yeah.
See, because I think the black triangles are U.S. government technology as well.
Yeah.
But I think that maybe sometimes they have a sense of irony. And they show up. I do think that there is a sense of like, because if it's just our boys up there, right, piloting these triangles, and if I was a 21-year-old just out of that boot camp, flying my little, my pyramid-shaped saucer on my fun little, like, essentially, like, recon mission or whatever, I'd buzz some people. I'd scare the living shit out of a bunch of drum circles. Because that would be the funnest thing to do in that ship.
Yeah, look at these assholes playing crop circle tones.
Hit him with the strobe.
Got him.
It's hard to tell the difference sometimes between the man-made ones and the real alien ones, because the man-made ones are based on the alien ones.
We're chasing the tail now.
Yeah. So, but if something is making mechanical noises, if it has rivets and seams, then it's man-made, because advanced extraterrestrials aren't assembling their UFO the way we would build an airplane or a car on a Ford assembly line. They are literally materializing their craft out of the substrate of matter through these consciousness technology interfaces. It's why when these crash retrieval military guys go out and bring back a UFO that they've shot out of the sky and they look at the metal under a microscope, it's so pure that we couldn't replicate it even in a vacuum in space, because it's not being manufactured the way we would. It's being manifested into this dimension. And that's why the metals are so pure, because the atoms are coming into this dimension and organizing into the blueprint, the vibrational blueprint, through this sort of ET manufacturing process.
What if it's possible, though, that there's no such thing as an objective reality? What if it's possible that, like stuff like we are all sort of, it's like, how fish don't know that they're in water? That we're so completely ensconced in our own consciousness that we have no idea how to see the sort of edges of it. And I wonder if stuff like, the first thing that hits my mind is like, what if it's more like a world of there's no such thing as linear time, and stuff kind of farts from other parts of the time, like into our world from time to time, and like the stuff that crashed in Roswell is like a beater version of what they used to have, maybe. And they're like, oh yeah, that's our old shit that crashes. We don't have stuff that crashes anymore. We don't have stuff that could crash because it's not real.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the objective reality question is interesting. I think we're all just living in a bunch of competing consensus realities.
But where is the other? But so if we are all just a consensus of realities, where are those consensus? Where is the consensus happening? Like, that's the one thing. Is so if we're all sort of floating little observing orbs of intelligences, where are we congregating for that to happen?
In the emptiness.
But that's inherently empty, right? Or is then that means there was something have to be in there? Isn't that technically like isn't that the backdrop of the Kabbalah or whatever? So like, honestly,
like turtles all the way down, man.
Yes.
I like the objective reality question, because my favorite image is that rabbit duck. Like, do you see a rabbit? Do you see a duck? Or like the dress? I swear to God, it's white and gold, but people will fight me that it's blue and black. But this is like, my gold is your black, my green is your purple. What is objective reality?
And who was it that said you stare long enough into the darkness, you'll start to see the back of your own head?
Holy shit, I think that was Kid Rock.
Yeah, probably.
Bow with the bow is an incantation.
Yes. Give it to me, my guru. Like the little man, like that's why that little man was with the whole time.
Right after the break, more high strangeness, live from the Philosophical Research Society, right here on SpectreVision Radio.
Well, that's something that Valet talks about is, the cases of a group of people who all see a UFO together at the same time, but they all see something different, right? Which is just incredibly puzzling. Right? It's
like, is that an intelligence? Like, if you see something else, because I do find it, I'll bring back Aleister Crowley, like, the idea that it's all sort of reflections of stuff that's going on inside of our own minds. Jacques Vallée talks about that with the UFO, like the capital P phenomena, that's something about our brains conferring with some giant sea of consciousness. And that's what we're seeing, is to sort of, it's supposed to be like some version of things saying live, laugh, love from the sky. Like, remember to be thinking, and you're like, what about what?
It feels to me sometimes like we are just this incredibly primitive life form we're just now starting to become aware of the questions, but we'll never get the answers. I think about all the time, my wife and I were out in the desert, and there was ants were besieging our picnic table. So my wife got the idea she said, I'm gonna go crumple up some saltines over near the tree so that I'm giving them something so they'll stop bothering us. And it worked, but it sort of became this preoccupation with us throughout the weekend of like watching the impact on their society from us crumpling up some saltines, right? And we started noticing, like, look, they work in pairs. They're bringing it back over, like that big one's bullying that little one. And then I started thinking about how generations from now, they'll talk about the day of the cracker, right? The cracker, it came from the heavens and it fed the people. It fed the people for years to come. So I don't know that we're that different.
The cracker brings death.
God, that's so bleak.
That was what happened if God exists, why he put plutonium in the earth. He's like, see what that does.
So bringing it back to the role of the psychedelic and sort of in human evolution, right? There's this. I haven't read this book, but a friend of mine was telling me about a book. I believe it's called The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, and it's this guy has this theory that Jesus was tripping, basically, like he was just shoveling mushrooms.
He definitely looks like the guy who first gave me mushrooms. Yes. He would look like he's holding.
So the guy who wrote this book apparently wrote it after gaining access to the Vatican Library, which is not open to the public.
Well, what about all that stuff that came from back in the day? All the Gnostics and shit. All those guys were tripping balls.
Right. So in fact, Moses. It's probably there's a very good chance that many of the sort of key moments of all religious systems had some element of mind-altering substances involved.
I mean, like so many, like across the world, pagan cultures, right? Like used it through ritual practice even before. There's shamans from all over the world that this is a part of a ritual and practice, and once sort of. Christianity came, Crusades, etc. They adopted a lot of these things within their own practices as well, and within their own mythology. And so it's consistent across the board that this has been a pivotal part of our process as being human beings in general.
But then why does that thought get organized into what it gets organized into? Like, I guess that's the one thing, is that if it does come from this sort of mind expanding, soul consciousness opening kind of font of knowledge from the earth itself, then it turns into like a pedophile whack-a-mole carousel. And how do we get there?
But that's the human endeavor, I think this is a good topic to touch on about this. A friend of mine wrote a book called The Psychedelic Gospels, which talks about this. But if you look to the three major Abrahamic religions, right, Judaism, Muslim, Christianity, the presence of angels in those religions and how they appear and how they manifest, the fact that Muhammad couldn't read and went into a cave and an angel said, write, read, and that's how it came. There's these stories again and again through time immemorial of these beings that are ineffable, hard to express in words, coming to intervene in humanity. And that's where it starts to get really fucked up, because it's like, are they time travelers? What is time? What is it? Why in all of these major wisdom traditions are these apparitions appearing? And there's the fine line of, okay, is it that they're taking medicinal plants? Did Moses' burning bush have DMT in it? Or maybe they were meditating, and like, we live in a world with Wi-Fi and all of these intrusions of chemicals and whatever else. I mean, think back then, they had no fucking Wi-Fi distractions, stars out at night. Imagine how deep they could go just from closing their eyes and dreaming.
Staring at water for way too long.
Yeah.
Just look at it.
This is a great rock.
Bro.
Seen this rock? Looks kind of funny. But I have a cynical stripe in me, though, that sometimes wonder if the stuff that we read about in those holy books are sometimes, they're written by a person, they're written by a human being, and so sometimes I wonder if those entities were like literally who they stole the ideas from. You know, like, I met this amazing angel that told me all these great ideas, and then he turns out it was just a guy that he listened to have a bunch of great ideas, and then he wrote all the stuff down. But I think that it more speaks to what we get from psychedelics when we use them. And it's such a part of who we are. And I don't know anybody who becomes close-minded after doing psychedelics. I've never fully seen someone go MAGA after a hardcore ayahuasca night. It's been like, actually, I think Trump's right. You know what I mean? Like, which is it'd be insane. That'd be very different. But
where were you in the pandemic?
Yeah.
I mean, because 2020, the conspirituality Trump ayahuasca intersection. Hello.
It is.
You missed a
really,
big chapter there.
We learned that. I did not know that. How far left you could go to touch right. But yeah, that's yeah. Please, someone else.
Yeah. So, on a volunteer basis only, is anyone here, for those who have partaken, and Jim is our resident straight edge panelist, but I suppose this even without a mind-altering substance, would anyone care to share, like, your experience with the corporeal entity, an experience had while under the influence that feels paranormal, i.e. not a hallucination. You're walking away from it feeling that you touched a reality in some way, or there was something demonstrably real about it, or your sense of it was that it was real.
Well,
you're the other big drug user.
I'll add that
it's me.
It's wild for me to think about actually doing psychedelics, because without them in my life, I have experienced a tremendous amount of paranormal activity that has challenged my own notion of what reality holds, right? And this is from, sort of the stereotypical Scooby-Doo style transparent ghost that I've seen with my own two eyes and experienced that in reality.
It was actually just the guy who drives the ice cream truck. You had to just pull the mask off.
Yeah. To like a CE5 experience that at the time I didn't know was a CE5 experience that was based through meditation that completely changed my life. It happened at a mountain in eastern Washington state. This mountain, Mount Adams, is known historically as a paranormal hotspot and a place where UFOs are constantly seen. There's sort of a UFO guru that has a property there that can kind of predict when they're going to be flying over, and they essentially do a version of CE5 meditation every single night in this field. So going there, I was doing Euphomet, but it was a radio show at the time. Right now, it's a documentary podcast. Then I was an enthusiast. I was entertained by the idea of doing something in the space, and I was, kind of like just having a lot of fun exploring these elements. I didn't know how seriously I was actually taking these things, though, but I wanted a connection. And so the last night while there, after already experiencing strange lights in the sky and thinking, what if there was an opportunity to connect in a more deeper way? What if this isn't just all fun? What if there's something else here? What if I'm actually searching for something more? And so the last night we decided to separate, me and my friends, and just go into our own little spaces and take time and meditate and look towards the mountain, and maybe, just maybe, there would be something that like spoke to us. So I find a place in the middle of the fields, and I'm looking at the mountain, and I'm just focusing on breathing in and out. I learned how to meditate in theater school. They taught it as a class, and I had never done it since. So this was me reconnecting with that part of my life as well. And as I sat there with like kind of a soft gaze to the mountain, focusing on my breathing, the sun was going down, and this light appeared on the mountain. Now, this was happening all weekend long. These lights would pop up in the mountain in different places, and some would say, oh, these are hikers that are out and about. Yeah, and that does happen. There is night hikers in this place. But you would see these lights fall from hundreds and hundreds of feet and then take a sharp corner and be gone. So these were not hikers unless it was an incredibly tragic incident that I don't even know how you do that. So I as I'm meditating, I'm seeing this light and I'm getting like a little bit excited, but I'm maintaining composure and I'm just still focusing on my breathing. And at some point in time, I realized that as I'm breathing out, this light is growing in intensity. And as I'm breathing in, the light is shrinking. And so I sit there for 20 fucking minutes, seemingly breathing in and out of this light hundreds and hundreds of yards away. And there was something, I even like kind of tricked my breath. I was like, okay, I'm gonna breathe a little fast. Like as it became real, it changed me that night. And I went home and I quit my job. I quit my full-time job, and I decided that these stories that I'm collecting from a computer chair, I need to go out in the field and I need to learn more about this. I need to meet the people that are experiencing these things themselves. And with it came a great level of respect for those people, that these things, whether they are through psychedelic means or through the numinous, right? Like, they're changing people's fucking lives. And we can't explain what it is, but all we know is that it feels very lonely, unless you know other people are experiencing it too. So that was I think my biggest, most profound moment with consciousness that I can explain, that was just life-changing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Your experience reminds me of this word. It's a Welsh word called hyreth, and it's homesickness for something that doesn't exist, for like a moment in time that may never have been. So I think that's an important thing to touch upon, the loneliness of what it feels like to see that could be a reality, and then to get back to this reality, this society. But yeah, I mean, I have been a dabbler, and you know, I don't like to discount the merit of the lessons that were learned partying. Like, I think the over medicinal use of the medicine. Hey, like, we've all been in our 20s at one point, and I think that like the lessons I learned from other recreational drugs were really valuable. But psychedelics, as a tool, as a medicine, as a door opener, have completely changed my world in so many ways, more affirming than anything. And I mean, I could tell stories of like doing 5-MeO DMT and hitting the top of the holy mountain and being like, fuck this, no more. But I think the most valuable story to share is, you know, I have had a lot of experience with ayahuasca. It's a beautiful tool that can take you through all the bardos, right? To the edges of hell, to the edges of infinity. And the last time I did ayahuasca, I had one small ceremony. I'm going to say the ceremony before that. It was 2019, and it was before the pandemic. And I had this ceremony where, it was the most intense, you know, and in the medicine space, they say you shouldn't say bad, you should say challenging. So challenging, right? But it was this vision of the toxicity of what can happen when spirituality becomes completely navel-gazing, and it is no longer a relational tool. It's a tool to how can I capitalize, how can I become, how can I make this an identity, how can I elevate myself above everybody else, because I took this thing and I saw this thing and nobody else saw this thing. Now I'm gonna write a book on it, I'm gonna capitalize on it, and nobody else knows what I'm talking about, so come to me. And I had a hell ceremony of that, of just feeling how disgusting and vile that is. And at the end of it, a lot of purge, a lot of, oh my gosh, wow. A few weeks later, the pandemic happened. And as I mentioned before, like this convergence of conspiracy and spirituality, kind of bastardizing a lot of the things that a lot of us on this panel love, the people that are in this room love, exploration of the numinous, then turning to QAnon,
So that ceremony was the feet on the ground, enough is enough. I mean, if these things aren't tools to liberate you ultimately, then it's just another trap. So that's my story.
Thank you.
I actually had very deep, profound experiences while I was sober, just meditating. I found that in the end, that is kind of where you drop in, and there is stuff that's in there. And I don't know if it's just because of all of the years I spent doing drugs, but then now it is interesting is that you can drop in, and there's another place. But yeah, that's now ever since I had the experience that I had two big, very, very intense psychedelic experiences that then led to me sort of, I do it very casually ever since. The microdosing is...
You backed off. Can you say more about your meeting with the being that...
Oh yeah, it was cool.
What did he look like? Was it a he?
So we drank a bunch of mushroom tea, and I'll always remember because it was Abbey Road. It still worked back in the day. I remember not being hacky, it worked. And I laid down in between two stereo speakers and had full ego death. Like I just sort of like, the exteriors of me went away, and I was thrust into this place where I was looking at a series of pastel cylinders and discs and rectangles in this floating non-area. And then all of a sudden it started as a flash of light in front of me, then it materialized into the Big Lebowski, into Jeff Bridges from the Big Lebowski, because at the time I was cat-sitting my friend's cat Gecko, and I was just watching that movie over and over and over again, smoking weed. And the thing in front of me says, like, first of all, your heart rate's kind of out of control right now. I know this all is very freaky to you. I've appeared to in a way that you would find comfortable and engaging. This is me showing to you that. And so he was just like, just so you, and then it really was him. I like floated into like a position in front of him where he was just like, okay, so this is a whole area. This is the world of 3D information, where he's like, basically shortcut version of this is that your brain's an operating system. All of reality is sort of like a computer program that your operating system computes and works off of. You're seeing here, it's kind of the raw data section of what's going on here. Most people who arrive here have been meditating their whole lives and you just did, like, it was kind of funny because I'll always remember that the guy was sarcastic. Where he was just like, and you're essentially, your dumb ass just kind of got here. Just so you know that. Like, he's just like, so I'll show it to you. And so he was like, but first of all, you have to lower your heart rate before I can do any of that. So he sat and he talked with me and he walked me through sort of like chilling out. And then eventually he was like, all right, you want to see the stuff? Essentially, and I was just like, yes. And so we like zoomed back up out, and he was like, this is what you'd call heaven, but it's not that. It's this place where the energy that you were goes and then gets redistributed back out to various other intelligences. And I was just like sitting like this, and
it's
he's
still
like,
Jeff Bridges.
What?
Still
Jeff Bridges.
Okay.
But it was really weird. And though it went through the last I know it was the last 4 songs of Abbey Road, because then he was like, so this is over for you now. You know, again, not supposed to be here. So bye-bye. And so it was like, I literally went zoom back to here now, and it was the end of Abbey Road. I remember just like sitting full up, like, what the fuck just happened to me? And they're all like, we thought you died, man. You know? And so, but it taught me a lot. It was the first time I was just like, but now thinking upon that later on, I wonder, was I just talking to some Jungian shard of me in a blackout, or was that something else? But as I'm getting older, I'm realizing I don't care.
Yeah, I don't know if it matters. You got that story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Contact with
who
Jodie
cares?
Foster.
Because I also think a part of it is, I think that's one thing you kind of have to get over, is the wondering about the actual answer to all of it.
The question, did it come from without or within? Who cares? And,
doesn't
and
matter.
at the end, it's like looking at the back of your own head. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what's
Yeah.
going on back there, man. I don't want to know.
Trust me, you don't. Yeah. Thank you for that. You've already said those don't crisscross for you, but maybe you have something to share.
I mean, yeah, there really isn't. I don't meet entities during my ceremonies. And in fact, my ayahuasca ceremonies were pretty anticlimactic compared to the stories I'm hearing tonight. But like the first time I did ayahuasca, I was just first of all, you puke your brains out, and then after the second cup of the ayahuasca brew, I felt all these hands come out of the ground and pull me down into the earth, and I thought, oh great, now it's gonna start, and then I was just floating in the void for hours, and the shaman's like, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm just floating in the void. He's like, I think you need another cup. And I'm like, I already had 2 cups. If I even smell that shit, keep it away from me. So he's like,
Have
okay.
a little more. Yes, a little more.
Yeah. So he's like, all right, let's just see what happens. So
Famous last words.
yeah, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but so I'm just floating in the void, and I'm thinking, I'm such a fucking idiot. I should have had the 3rd cup. Now I'm sick for no reason. I'm so stupid. And then, finally, the ayahuasca starts showing me all of my toxic thinking and speech patterns and my toxic behavior, and I'm like, yeah, I know. Yeah, no, I know. I know what an asshole I am. I don't need. I know.
I hear it from everybody.
Yeah, and then finally I realized that it was showing me what had been deleted from me when I was purging, and when I realized that, then I was just crying tears of joy. But I never met Jeff Bridges. I
don't think I met Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, I didn't get to go to my friends. They go out into space, and I don't get any of that. I just have to confront what a prick I am.
But in some traditions, so in the Colombian tradition, they say there's 4 different visions, right? There's nothing, the nada, which seems like you get to surface through a lot. There's the consultation, there's the pinta, and then there's surgery. So those are the 4 main ones. But they say that the nada sometimes can be the most precious, because you have to not be aware of all of what's going on because you're doing really deep work. So I think trip envy is a real thing, in those instances, I'm like, this sucks. I just feel like shit, and I see that I've made a lot of bad choices in life. Please stop. I'd much rather be with the praying mantis humans, whatever.
Yeah, where are those guys?
Where are they?
Stop telling me about my relationship issues. I want to meet an alien.
There's merit in that, though. I think there's merit in the void. There's merit in the darkness and the shadow. Honestly, one of my best mushroom experiences wasn't even a supernatural thing. I was just angry. I was just mad. I was like, everybody sucks. Why? And I'm having a very Daria moment. But I was sitting with my friend and telling him, man, I'm just so angry. And as I'm saying this, we're sitting on the beach and people are lighting these Japanese paper lanterns into the sky. And he's like, look, it's not all bad. Look at how beautiful this is. Humans are capable of really beautiful things. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And as he says that, one of the paper lanterns caught on fire. And I just see this man running down the beach going, oh, no. And I'm like, yeah, this is it. Perfect.
Incredible symbology.
By the way, do you think somewhere Jeff Bridges is telling a story of a dream he had about this guy with blonde hair and
I ran
glasses?
into this fat fuck one time. I was taking a long extended nap.
Is that Rooster Cogburn?
I don't know. Yes, essentially. Yes.
Bro, he should have been in my dream. Weren't you supposed to be cat sitting? You stone piece of shit.
Is this your Jeff Bridges?
No, it's slowly becoming my Bill Cosby, which was the second trip. Which was if you don't want to meet him in the middle of the bardo, because
Don't take the pudding pop. Do not.
Jesus Christ.
Well, I'll answer my own question. Well, once, without getting into too much detail or taking too much time, well, I don't want to. It's the other person's business, so I won't name who they are. But I was with someone else, and we had both eaten some mushrooms, and we were in two different places. And where I encountered an entity who, there were some very specific interactions that took place. And later, when we got back together, that person reported the same entity having encountered that night. And which was just absolutely undeniable.
What did they look like, the entity?
It was not a visual thing. It was a conversation and a sense of.
Did they say similar things? Were they talking shit, or what was going on?
Yeah, they said similar things. Like yes, there were commonalities in the conversations.
Your buddy says you suck. What do you say about that?
All right, I was not planning on sharing this story because it is the craziest thing I have experienced.
We're out of time. No, just kidding.
Okay, good.
No, please.
I'm off the hook.
Go.
Okay, so as a professional UFO researcher, I know a lot of people who have a strong connection to their star family, to their lineage, whether it's Arcturians or Pleiadians or whatever the fuck, and and I know people who. What?
I thought they cut out all their toxicity when you.
Yeah, no, not all of it. That was just the first layer of the onion. Yeah.
But fuck Zeta Reticuli. They can go fuck themselves.
Yeah. So I've got a very close friend who's got a very strong connection to what he calls the dragon people, okay? And when I started working with my shaman and having these amazing psychedelic experiences, I was saying to my friend, you got to come do this with me. This will be my gift to you. And he's like, yeah, I can't do it. And I'm like, why? And he finally told me why. He said, the dragon people won't let me do it. He said, I did a trip with this chick from work, and we both drank the mushroom tea, and the dragons screamed at him and said, how dare you bring someone who isn't one of us into this sacred circle? And they actually suppressed her experience. So even though she had like a ton of mushrooms, she didn't experience anything. She didn't get high. So I was like, what the fuck? So he's like, yeah, I can't do a trip with you. I can't do a ceremony with you. So I went to see my shaman, and he always asked me before a ceremony, do you have an intention for this ceremony? And I always say, yeah, I just want to experience whatever I'm meant to experience, But this time he asked me, do you have an intention? And I said, yeah, you know what? I do have an intention. I want to meet the dragons because I was pissed. I was snubbed, and I was taking it
That
really.
would be 6 cups.
Yeah. Well, this was a mushroom trip. So I drink the tea, and I'm laying there, and I'm like, this is weird. Like, this is not normal. Like, normally I right away I'll merge with the music, and it's like this cosmic celebration of love. And this time I'm like, this is something's wrong. And he's like, I think you need another cup. So I drank it. And then I couldn't see them, but I felt them. I felt the dragons show up. And I was like, oh shit, oh fuck, oh shit, oh fuck. And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, oh fuck. And then one of them touched me on my third eye, and I went into a full body screaming orgasm for like 4 or 5 hours. And I
Kundalini
lost my
dragons.
voice from screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." And yeah, that was my last mushroom trip.
Wow.
I can't believe you weren't going to tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's a little weird. Right?
Imagine if you'd had a third cup. Guys, thank you so much. This was incredibly fun.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.